Did you know that your brain, which weighs just 3 pounds, is a home to over 86 billion nerve cells? Surprisingly, this calls for your maximum attention because not only do certain diets and activities harm these nerve cells, but they also directly affect the hippocampus. For those who don't know, hippocampus is a crucial part of the brain that is responsible for converting short-term memory into long-term memory. So, moving on, the only solution to these damaged nerve cells is regeneration, which also people find it difficult to believe that brain nerve regeneration does not only occur in children but also occurs in older adults. So to clear this doubt, Dr. Eric Berg, a highly ketogenic expert, answers this question perfectly. Does the brain cells regenerate?
It's been thought of that our brains do not regenerate. Our brain cells are not renewed, okay? This is completely false information because the brain cell can regenerate. In fact, it's the rate at which your brain cells regenerate that determines how your cognitive function's going to work or not work as you get older.
This is simply a fascinating piece of information. Virtually everyone can benefit from having more brain cells. The brain can make thousands of new neurons every day and maintain the ability well into old age. By the time you turn 50, you will likely have replaced the original neurons in your hippocampus. This process of creating new neurons is called neurogenesis. Practically, increasing brain cell production in seniors helps fight off age-related cognitive decline and prevent conditions like Alzheimer's and dementia. As with any problem, there are experts who deeply research solutions. In the case of brain regeneration, Dr. Eric Berg believes that eating certain foods can help you keep your brain in peak working condition.
If there was one food that can fix your brain, what would that food be? Go ahead and put it in the comment section below. Now, there are a lot of foods that can support the brain, but out of those foods, there are certain foods that are much better than others based on the nutrients in those foods.
So, this further begs the question, what foods can really play a part in brain regeneration? When people talk about brain foods, fatty fish is often at the top of the list because it is a rich source of omega-3 fatty acids. What you might not know is that about 60% of your brain is made of fat, and just over half of that fat is comprised of omega-3 fatty acids. Your brain uses omega-3s to build brain and nerve cells, and these fats are essential for learning and memory. Omega-3s may slow age-related mental decline and help prevent Alzheimer's disease. On the flip side, not getting enough omega-3s is linked to cognitive impairments and depression. In general, eating fish seems to have numerous health benefits. This brings us to Dr. Eric Berg's favorite food for brain regeneration, salmon.
Now, to reverse engineer this, we just need to know what foods are high in B1, okay? Or what food is high in B1, vitamin D3, omega-3 fatty acids, and zinc, okay? So the number one food that I think is best for improving your cognitive function is salmon. Because it's loaded with B1, it has vitamin D3, it has zinc, it has omega-3 fatty acids, and a lot of other nutrients that are good for the brain that I didn't mention. But again, I'm not talking about just having salmon. You have to have a lot of different foods, and you can get these nutrients from other foods, but salmon tends to have some really key nutrients to support your brain. And of course, I'm talking about wild-caught salmon, okay? I'm not talking about farm-raised salmon. And I highly recommend consuming the skin on the salmon, okay? So you can bake it, bake the skin, and it's actually quite delicious.
Next, we'll explore some certain nutrient that keeps abusing the brain's authority and functions. But first, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to help YouTube push this video to someone who might benefit best.
Now let's talk about the things that deplete nutrients in the brain, specifically B1. because it's not just a matter of getting B1 from the diet, it's a matter of making sure that you don't deplete your B1, which is probably more of the situation that people run into. So I'm going to list off these items that will deplete B1, which affects your cognitive function. Number one, alcohol. Especially if you're an alcoholic, you're going to be very deficient in B1, and that's going to affect your cognitive function. All right, number two is sugar, okay? Refined sugar, refined carbohydrates, okay, which is a common problem. Tea, because of the tannic acid, blocks B1 from being absorbed. So if you're a tea drinker, you better make sure you're taking B1. Caffeine, okay? Caffeine will definitely deplete B1. So if you're a coffee drinker and you drink a lot of coffee, you might think it's enhancing your cognitive function. Well, it may for about an hour, but if you drink a lot of it, you'll find your cognitive function decrease over time. Also, your ability to put your attention will decrease, and your ability to learn if you're consuming too many things with caffeine. Too much caffeine actually lessens the blood flow to your brain. And then we get to the topic of stress, okay? Stress really can do a number on your brain. It can increase glucose, which will affect the brain. And it also just basically destroys the brain. If someone's under chronic stress, boy, does that affect your cognitive function big time. But having enough B1 will protect you against this extra stress. So a high carb diet that turns into glucose that feeds your brain cells, at least temporarily, needs a lot of B1. And it depletes B1. So when you run out of B1, now you can't use that fuel and the nerves starve. Why? Because you don't have enough B1 to metabolize the glucose. All right, antibiotics can deplete B1. Certain medications will deplete B1, like metformin, diuretics, and consuming chocolate. Okay, so if you consume a lot of chocolate, and I'm talking about the ketogenic version of chocolate, you could end up with a B1 deficiency. There's a really good paper that I read on this topic. I'll share it down below, but it talked about starving your brain by overfeeding it. Okay, too many carbohydrates. It's very counterintuitive, but that's what's happening. Versus fasting. Okay, so if you think fasting is starving, it's not. In fact, your brain loves fasting. Once you adapt to the ketogenic diet, your body starts to turn your fat into ketones, and your brain loves it. So the most important thing you can do for your brain is to switch to a healthy ketogenic diet with periodic fasting. We call that intermittent fasting. That's the most important thing. The second most important thing is to consume foods high in B1. Okay, we've talked about that. But parallel with that, you want to avoid the things that will deplete B1. Now, I just got a picture of like a typical college student, right? Who's not getting enough sleep, who's using their brain a lot, who's probably eating a lot of carbohydrates like donuts in the morning with their coffee, maybe a cigarette, and maybe at night some alcohol, going through a massive amount of stress. Talk about creating a B1 deficiency. That would do it. In fact, that was my story. And that's what this video is about, my history of how I ended up with a very severe B1 deficiency. So I have a lot of experience to tell you some of these side effects.
So, after all this information, I'm gonna ask again. I want you to answer this yourself. Can your brain cells regenerate? As for me, I'll say yes. Through processes like neurogenesis influenced by lifestyle choices such as exercise, diet adjustments, mental challenges, social interactions, and adequate sleep, it's clear that we possess more control over our cognitive health than previously thought. By actively engaging in behaviors that promote brain cell growth and maintenance rather than succumbing solely to age-related decline or stressors, we empower ourselves towards healthier aging and improved cognitive resilience over time. As research continues unveiling mysteries surrounding our brain's capabilities, embracing proactive measures today could pave pathways toward brighter tomorrows filled with sharper minds. I'll be happy to read your thoughts on this in the comments section. Goodbye, friends.